Always say that. There you go. You're live, so just start talking. Just talking. I'm gonna go talk to these trees down here, and I'll be back. Okay. Okay. All right, go take Letty with me. I'm gonna leave her. All right, you got this. You got your notes. Yeah. You all right? What was that sound? What were you trying to close it? It's closed? Okay, I thought I was smashing Letty in there. No, I put her at an angle so that way that wouldn't happen. Okay, and don't freak out because you see a 0 on there. That does not mean nobody's watching you, Gus. Okay, So just talk to the just talk to screen yourself. Like somebody's there. Just talk to yourself. Oh my God, look at all these notes. You're gonna be on here forever. You about to pull a note. That's the only way I can make sure I don't miss nothing because last time I missed something that was important. You really did. So I don't want to do that again. All right, deuces. I'm gonna talk to my trees. All right. Yeah, the trail is right here. You see it next to the water? It say nobody's on here, so I don't know. All right, peace, family. This is Hassan. I'm just here to throw this lesson at y'all. If y'all, yo, Dwayne, what's up, Dwayne? He said, I'm not. Oh, snap. Yo, she just told me that too. She was like, don't worry about the zeros because they be lying. And as soon as she said that, you put the joint in there, said you here, and it definitely does not recognize you. So, all right, let me keep it moving then. All right, so this lesson is these thoughts. I would just say these thoughts have been on my mind for a little bit, and I just want to share them with y'all. Um, hopefully, it's something that you can use. So, all right, so I'm gonna start it off with the. So I was watching The Mandalorian, right? And that's what made me think about this lesson because I was watching The Mandalorian, and they were it was one of the episodes in which they were concerned about their ways, passing from one person to the next or not passing from one person to the next and then dying off. So it made me think about this. So for this lesson I put in the description, I put some links. I try to put them in orders of me presenting, so that way you can just click on it in order and it's not confusing. Um, so hopefully that works. And all right, so I'm just going to jump right into it. The title of this lesson is "This is the Way," and what I want to talk about real quick is what this statement means. To the Mandalorians, it means one thing, but I thought that it was relevant to all of us. And so I'm just going to jump right into it. All right. So in in many of the practices of the earth, religions, whatever you want to call them, cultures, I will call them. You will see that this theme of passing on that which is good to the next generation, you'll see it in all the cultures. So much so that we will fight and kill each other over it. So it's definitely something that's important to people. Um, But you find this, I find this in pretty much every culture I look at, whether it is the path, whether it is the Tao, whether it is in Hebrew we say Hadirek, in Arabic you would say Deen. All of these concepts follow a similar reasoning, and that is if you stay on the path, life will be fruitful and beneficial. But if you deviate from the path, then the outcomes can be disastrous as for the traveler. So all of these cultures that we have will admonish you to stay on the path, the way, the direction, all to me all the same concept. So me, I draw my understanding from different places, and I encourage you to do the same thing. So when I was doing this study, I grabbed me a Bible, I grabbed a Quran, a Hadith. I also grabbed the Tao. I hope I say this right. Tao Te Ching by Lao Shu. I'm sorry, who's a Chinese philosopher. So in all these things that I was reading, I still found the same commonality. In Deuteronomy 18:9, you have you have an admonishment that says, "Do not learn the ways of the nations that you're going into." Right? In Jeremiah 10, and again in the Bible, it again repeats the same sentiment. Do not learn the ways of the people that are around you. And this is spoken to the children of Israel. Um, in Genesis 24, verses 1 through 4, when Abraham is talking about getting a wife for his son, um, he says to his charge, the person he had in charge of his family and household or whatever, he says, "Swear that you will not take a wife from among the Canaanites where we dwell now." He told him to go back up into where we came from and get a wife for my son from there. Um, and again, all of these are basically an admonishment for them to practice their own way and not practice the ways of other people. And I'm gonna get more into it as I go along. So, upon first glance, it may seem as if though that these differences in human expression of culture are at odds with one another. And indeed, some of them are at odds with one another. However, by and large, human expression is random and completely arbitrary. The commonality typically exists where external forces are present. For example, humans who live in colder regions of the earth will develop a lifestyle to account for that cold. So while the Inuit of Alaska wear pelts and furs, the Siberian and the Russian also develop a culture around animal skins. These people share a common ancestor, yet the cultural expression of the people is varied far and wide. Um, if you got your phone in front of you or a tablet or something in front of you, um, Google Alexander Kumishin. That's Alexander Khimushin. So you're gonna Google his name, right? And then once you Google his name, next to his name, write Siberian cultures and hit enter and see what comes up. What you should get is a bunch of pictures. Now, Alexander is a photographer, and what he was doing with these pictures is he was taking pictures of cultures that were basically dwindling in their popularity and in their scope. They're dying cultures. They're being absorbed by the other cultures that are out in the world. Um, so they're being swallowed up. But when you see these pictures, you will see that the Siberian area is a very large area. And as he's going through and taking photos of these cultures, you can see the variances in the cultures. You can see how, although although they have a common ancestor, they have a shared ancestor, their cultural expression is very different. They all have on similar things like skins and pelts, and, to keep them warm. It's freaking cold in Siberia, right? But you'll see the design changes from one culture to another. The colors change from one culture to another. Um, who wears what? The style changes from one culture to another. So all these, and I'm saying it to say that all of these cultures exist and they have the same root in that it's cold up here. We got to keep warm. So they wear animal skins and pelts and things of that nature and furs. But the randomness comes in of human expression. Human expression is just completely random. Some people decide, hey, we're going to dye this blue. Some people decide, let's dye it red. But it also depends on what's available to you. Because as humans, we live our lives two ways, by outside factors and then internal factors. So there's the cold that's outside of us, but then there's also what we think and feel about the cold. Okay. And that's how human culture develops. So what you will notice is that the expression of culture, although similar, will change simply by color and design. Some will be vibrant, complex iterations. Others will be common or earth tone iterations. These are examples of the randomness of human culture. It is a combination of what we experience, both inwardly and outwardly. And as we cross the land toward Russia proper, you will notice the way people arrive at alcoholic drink, it wildly changes. So in the if you pull up I had to pull up a map and kind of look at this, but if you pull up a map of the world, you can see how this is how the variances look across the map. So if you start and we're in the northern Arctic area of the map, but if you start on the right side toward Greenland, right? Greenland, again, same cold weather culture, right? But in Greenland, they develop a drink called, I hope I say this right, kiviak. And if I'm saying it correctly, kiviak is seagull fermented wine or fermented drink. The process they do is they take the skins of seals and then they take the seagulls and I think they mix some grain with it. And because the seal skin is waterproof, they put it in the seal skin and then they just like sit it to the side and let it ferment for months at a time. So what you end up with is seagull wine, right? Now that's in Greenland. But as you go toward the right on the map or toward the west, you arrive at the Balkans. And in the Balkans, the Balkan area, they have a drink which they call, hope I say this right, rakija or kavas. It's a fermented drink, right? But this fermented drink is made by mixing grain and plums or berries. And it's supremely popular. It's everywhere, okay, in that area of the world. Now, what changed on one side of the world where it's cold and a few thousand miles to the other side of the world where it's equally as cold is the availability of those plums. In Greenland, they're using seagulls, right? In the Balkans, they're using plums. Well, those plums are probably not available in Greenland, right? So you still have a fermented drink, but you arrive at that fermented drink differently because of what's available to you in your environment. Okay. So the availability of resources such as low growing berries, also the time it takes to arrive at the finished product is what will change in the cultural expression. Also, another important thing is what happens in the interim. In the time when you are fermenting your wine, the time that you are growing your food, the time that you are growing your children. What happens in the interim? Because that also will have effect on your cultural expression. Okay. So are all these factors are part of the final product. So rather than saying we develop better ways of doing the thing, we should simply look at it as we develop different ways of doing the same thing. The judgment on what works better is left to the person who's practicing it. What should concern us is not the varying degrees of differences. Instead, we should be focused on what's the same. In the in the previous example, we saw that drinking fermented drink manifests itself across thousands of miles of territory. So we can say with some certainty that if our culture was to cross paths with their culture for any significant period of time, then drinking a fermented drink will be introduced at some point. So now, going back to our example in Genesis 24, where Abraham is telling his steed, do not get a wife for my son from these people. Okay? These people are not, they're not going to produce um, a suitable partner for my son. Okay? Now, we could look at that and say, oh, that's a judgment. He's judging the Canaanites. He's judging their culture. However, the astute will also notice that if you know yourself, if you know your DNA, you know your patterns of behavior, you know how you think. If you know yourself, then you can better determine what is good for you in your life. Okay? And what someone else practices may not be good for you. The example I give you, if you go to in the links, hopefully I'll put this in order for you. But in the links, go down to the the third link in the description. If you click on the third link in the description, it's it should be a picture, and in the description actually it says topic and it says picture. One of them is a picture, one of them is an article. Click both of them. Open them up. I want you to take a second to look at the article though, because the article is about the genetic what researchers found in the genes of Asiatic people versus other people. What they found when they were doing the study is that the genetic makeup of certain people allow them to be able to process alcoholic beverages different. For some people, and when you're doing reading, always know that the research is done from the researcher's perspective. Okay. So take the information in, but take it as information. So what the researchers found is that some people's genetic makeup made it more likely that they would absorb and process alcohol a specific way. And then other people's genetic makeup, specifically in a large population of Asians, we'll say Chinese and Korean specifically, they found that in their gene pool, this particular allele was not present. This genetic variant was not present that allowed them to process the alcohol. So what they looked at it as, and this is perspective, they looked at it as a deficiency. I'll just call it a difference, not a deficiency. A deficiency to me says it's almost like a judgment. But what they found is that in certain Asian populations where this gene was not present, or where a recessive gene was present, then the processing of alcohol was going to be a lot different, meaning that they cannot drink as much without having the physical signs immediately. Okay. And that is what they notice is the flushness of their skin, the flushed face. And that was due to the fact that their genetics was saying, I don't really like alcohol like that. Okay. Not that they can't drink alcohol at all, but their tolerance for it is a lot lower because of their genetic makeup. And this is what they were finding. When they looked at other people's genetic makeup, they found, like I said, this gene. And with this gene being present, it means that the body could process alcohol a lot more efficiently. Okay. So going back to Abraham. Now, if Abraham said, don't get a wife from among the Canaanites, right? And let's imagine that Abraham knows his genetic makeup. He knows that my genetic makeup does not have XYZ in it, right? But the Canaanites where I live, their genetic makeup does have that in it. Well, if I get a wife for my son from among these people, then whatever's in their genes will become part of my gene pool. So it's not always a judgment, but sometimes it's wisdom. Knowing yourself and knowing that what is present in you will mix with what's present in them and create an outcome. And sometimes that outcome is not favorable. So that's what Abraham was saying. Not just the customs and the practices of the people, but the people themselves will not make a good match for my son. If you look at the two links that I said, one of them is an image. It shows you a set of chromosomes and it breaks it down, just like with eye color. If you have a mother and a father who both have this dominant gene that allows you to process alcohol, those two people make a child, the child is highly likely to be able to process alcohol. But now, if you take a father who does not have that gene because he's Asian, right? Or say he's Korean, and then you take a mother who does have the gene, what will happen is you can get multiple combinations. You can get a child who has the mother's able to process alcohol gene and not get the father's. So then the child is able to process alcohol. Or you can get the reverse. It just depends on which one is expressed. And sometimes it's a roll of the dice. You can say, well, there's a possibility that the child might not be able to process alcohol. But it's a roll of the dice. You don't know what you're going to get. What you do know, though, as a parent, is if we don't marry into their gene pool, we'll be okay because we don't process alcohol. So if I tell my son, get yourself a wife from our own people so that, well, alcoholism does not creep into your bloodline. That's smart. That's an intelligent thing for me to tell my son because I know my genetic makeup. I know that we don't do well with alcohol. So it's smart for me to tell my son to stay away from somebody who may put that into his gene pool and possibly cause alcoholism to creep in. So that's what Abraham was saying in Genesis 24. So without judgment, you can make a decision on what will be good or bad for you or your future descendants if you are aware of your own patterns of behavior and genetic makeup. The easy way to imagine the human population is as of colors of the rainbow. And we're going to keep it extra simple. Just remember Roy G. Biv from school? Just 7. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Just 7, right? Let's say these founding 7 are peoples of the earth, right? If these founding 7s are 7 types of humans, then the mixing of the 7 would give rise to shades. So indigo people mixing with yellow people will give us hues of pink. Again, no judgment, just the reality that mixing with the different shades will provide us with different colors. Now, what if the founding 7 each were given a charge? So let's say each one of the 7 colors have a specific job that they're just made to do because of who they are. Each being important in their own way. Let's say, for example, the cyan people are genetically predisposed to see all shades of blue. The cyan people understand blue like no one else because they are blue, right? And as we are walking along the path of life, all seven of us, let's imagine all seven of us, a change takes place. And that change takes place, let's say, on the sun. That change will affect all of us, right? Because we all here and on planet Earth, right? But let's imagine if the cyan people were to decide somewhere along their path, on their way, you know what? We like the way the indigo people get down. We're gonna go over there and do what they do. And they leave off the cyan way to take up the indigo way, right? Who will tell us that the sky is changing colors? If the cyan people are able to detect even the slightest difference in blue, when they look up, they would see it. They say something's changed. And we can start investigating on what that change would be, right? The blue that represents a healthy sky would have changed ever so slightly. And all the other colors wouldn't even notice the shift. And if this change was one that um, could have caused a disaster to fall upon us, who will tell us that it's coming? If the cyan people give up their way for another way, who's going to be able to look at the sky and see that blue is off? Something's going on. How will we be prepared? So all of us will end up losing. Whatever destruction is coming, it's going to affect all of us, not just one of us, because one of us chose to leave off their way and practice something different. Disney's Mandalorian has another example of a people who, through warfare, lost their way, and they also lost their home planet, very similar to the children of Israel. In the story, it says that their way was in the story. I'm sorry. It turns out that their way is going to be instrumental in saving lives in the future. And the person who is the main character in the story is charged with maintaining that way. And through him maintaining that code and adhering to that code, his character ends up being instrumental in the future in balancing out the powers that exist in the galaxy. And that's just in that story. But this is also true for humans that exist here in reality. The last example of importance of maintaining your own path I will give you is found in the kitchen. Okay, the microwave. The microwave is a modern invention that works by exciting light particles that pass through objects. I don't know if y'all know that's how microwaves work, but that's how they work, by exciting light. Okay, as the light particles pass through the object and bump into each other, they transfer heat. That heat is then transferred to the substance, and the substance becomes hot. Now, most people don't know that we use light to heat our food, and that is because microwave, I'm sorry, microwave light beams are not perceptible to the human eye. So every time you hit that button on that microwave, if you could see it, you would see a bunch of particles bouncing around in there.
Why do you have that in too? I put it on one.
Oh, I had it on one.
It was on two.
Oh, okay, so I got to pick up the same. What was I saying?
Sorry.
So yeah, if you could see the light, if you could see the light waves inside of the microwave, that's what you will be looking at. You will be looking at particles bouncing around and vibrating, right? And heat and transferring heat because of it. So although we're not able to perceive these light waves, they have a very real effect that we can perceive. The vibrating particles give us the heat. So when we touch our food, we know something happened there, but we couldn't actually see what happened. We just see the light come on in the microwave and then pull the food out when it dings. It's hot. But we don't literally perceive the microwaves. They're outside of our perception, just like X-rays. They're outside of our perception. We know they're affecting us, but we can't see it.
They can't see me, right?
No. So what?
I was making one.
Oh no, I gotta focus on me. So
Right.
see. So, question, what if those vibrating particles that we can't see were doing something to us? Let's say they were taking heat from us as they pass through, right? To the point that we become cold and sick. Everyone around us will be looking for the cure, but none of us will be able to see what the cause is, right? Because it will be microwaves. We wouldn't even be able to tell what's going on. We just see the outcome. We getting cold, we getting sick, but we don't know what's causing it because we can't see it. This is where we find ourselves today. The human family is currently being bombarded with vibrations that we sometimes start. Other times we keep certain vibration patterns going. Even though those vibrational frequencies and patterns are detrimental to the whole, we keep them going anyway. But if the main characters are telling us, the main proponents of these vibrations are telling us that we should continue to do this, continue to practice, because this is their way. If we then take on those practices and we see the effects of those practices and they don't, should we then say something? Should we say, by doing this vibrational pattern, we are creating this outcome? Should we speak up? If the person who is promoting it is more powerful than you, do you speak up? Do you say, hey, look what's happening? I can see this happening? Or do we not say anything at all? Because if the powerful can't see it, then it must not exist, right? What if we change it up? I don't know how old y'all are, but I'm gonna hit y'all with a reference that y'all might not know. Let's change it up the music, okay? Let's say in the human family, we all at the party, right? And let's say the DJ throws on some music, and let's say we all want to dance to the music, right? But let's say we take from Seinfeld, we take Elaine Bennis, and we put Elaine in the middle, and we say, Elaine, you in charge. Teach us how to dance to this music. If you don't know the reference, Elaine Bennis can't dance at all. What she does in the character in the show, just Google it. Just Google Elaine Bennis dancing. You'll laugh because it's horrible. It's that bad. It's really bad. Like she can't hear the music, the rhythm, nothing.
She dances outside of the beat.
There is
She's away from it.
no coordination. It's her and the music, two completely different things. You see what I'm saying? So now, if, for example, in that example, if Elaine was in charge of all of us, she's in charge of the whole dance floor, and our life, it was a life and death situation. Some aliens break through the clouds and say, we're going to kill everybody unless you can dance. And we say, well, look, Elaine is the president. She's in charge. Show us how to dance, Elaine. We getting wiped out. The whole planet, we getting wiped out. Because she could never teach us how to dance. Her status, what she is over everybody else, matters not. She can't hear the beat. And because she can't hear the beat, she could never teach us how to dance.
That part.
This is the situation we find ourselves in today. Whether or not somebody is in a position of power matters not. Because each and every one of us have something significant to contribute to the human family. And in the case where you can see the light or hear the frequency vibration, you need to speak up. It doesn't matter if you were in a position of power or not, because the person who's in a position of power may not even be able to hear the music. And it may be vital for them to. because what they're doing could be destroying everything, even themselves. And at that point, it is on you, those who can see and hear, to step up.
Even when they say no, fuck you, that's wrong. You still got to tell the truth. You got to tell them what you see.
And they used to say during the 9/11 time, if you see something, say something. Well, it's just as true now. If you see something, say something.
You should ask them what they've been seeing.
So, whatever. Okay. Just as in the example of the genetic predisposition to alcohol, but some who will tell us that low tolerance to alcohol is a deficiency, it's something bad. A time will come when that frequency that could save us all will only be heard by a few. The few who maintain their way will be able to recognize the change. Just like birds fly using the Earth's magnetic fields to geolocate, and you cannot see those fields, but they exist. Those fields are invisible as the microwave light that heats our food, and yet there are real world consequences for ignoring them. If the birds were to ignore those invisible frequencies, those invisible fields, magnetic fields, they'd never get to their destination. They'd be lost. If the birds said, well, you know what? The animals that are on the ground, they can't feel these fields. So maybe we should go the direction they go and ignore these fields, these invisible magnetic fields. Maybe we should do what they're doing. That would lead to destruction for the birds because that is not their way. So during okay, so I'm gonna switch gears real quick. During the period of the Black Plague in Europe, millions of people died from disease. The disease was carried by bacteria. The bacteria lived inside of fleas. The fleas lived on the backs of mice and rats. The European at the time practiced a lifestyle that did not take into consideration the probability of disease transmission from unclean practices such as storing your food and your waste near one another or throwing your waste out into the street. They also did not practice regular bathing or cleaning the body on a regular basis. This was not their way. Google Black Death right now. Black Death. Actually, no. Google Black Death, Poland. When you do, you're going to find that while Europe was being decimated by Black Plague, by the bubonic plague, Poland was relatively untouched. Not that nobody got it. People got it. But it was nowhere near the degree of the rest of Europe. And they were sitting in the middle. So people dying on the left, people dying on the right, top, bottom. Polish was all right, relatively all right. Now, when you do your research, again, remember I said about research, beware of the perspective of the researcher, okay? People have asked this question about the Black Plague in Poland, and they've come up with different reasons as to why. Some people say, well, the disease was traveled, it really, traveled because the waterways, right? People were getting on boats and ships, and the mice were getting on the ships, eating the food, and then, they would bite, the fleas would bite the people, and then the people would get the plague, and then the people go on land, and they spread the plague that way. Okay. It did spread that way. That is true. But it also spread over land. They'll tell you that the bubonic plague started in Asia, started in Mongolia is what they'll tell you. But when you look at the effects of the plague, who did it kill off? Well, it did not decimate the populations where it started, supposedly. It didn't decimate those populations. They said that, well, in Poland, because they were landlocked, that's why it didn't get there. But there are other populations of people that are well inland, still got decimated in Europe. So it wasn't only the fact that they were not landlocked, it was something else. When you do your research on Black Death in Poland, what you'll find is uh, where is it?
You'll
Okay.
find.
So you'll find that while Europe was being decimated, Poland was relatively okay. Some attribute this to the different practices of the people, particularly the Jewish population, which practice regular bathing and washing and separation in their foods. A little trick they picked up from Middle Eastern cultures. Another standout during the plague were women who kept cats. Women who kept cats. Europeans noticed that women with cats didn't get sick, and they assumed that the women were doing something evil, and they began to castigate those women as witches. So, again, when I said culture is relative to me and then outside of me. So, the European did not practice regular bathing. They did not practice separation of their waste matter from their food matter. This was their practice. In some places in Europe, as we see here, they didn't keep cats. Okay. But there were some people who did. What happened to the people who were keeping the cats is they didn't get sick. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the women with cats weren't getting sick?
Because the cat's eating mice, right?
Cats were eating the mice. The flea is what carried the plague. Cats kill mice. No mice, no fleas. No fleas, no plague. Simple. But the European who practiced a different way looked at the woman with the cats and thought, if I'm dying, it can't be something that I'm doing wrong, right? It can't be that. They got to be doing something wrong if they're living. So what is it that they're doing? Well, they couldn't come up with it. They didn't know what it was. So they just made it up. They must be worshiping the devil. The devil is keeping them alive. That's what it is. I'm a God-fearing Christian person. And that witch over there is living and all my family's dying. It's got to be the devil. So to this day, in European cultures, there is still an association between witches and cats. Every Halloween, you will see depictions of both. And yet we don't know the context. Well, that's the context, guys. I just gave it to you. The reason why you see, on Halloween, the reason why you see cats, black cats associated with witches is because the people at the time, the unclean people at the time, the not knowledgeable people at the time thought that the women who were living were bad because they were living and not dying from the plague. It was just the cats. Medieval Europeans couldn't understand why Jewish people weren't dying off. A group of people, they were like, what's going on? Why the Jews ain't dying off? Like us. It must be something evil. So they started to attack them. The cat ladies and the Jews wouldn't get sick. The simple answer, Jews wash their hands and their bodies regularly. And the cats ate the mice. Very simple. But if that is not your way, if that is not the direction that you're going, if that's not your cultural practice, it's going to be something weird to you. And they saw what the Jews is doing as weird. They're washing themselves all the time. What's up with that? So it was strange to them. So they attacked them. What saved these people from Black Death was not a pocket full of posies. I don't know if y'all know that reference. That's Ring Around the Rosie, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Y'all don't remember that song? Well, y'all probably don't remember that song, but some of you older people will remember that. The song the kids used to sing. Well, that song came from Europe. It says, ring around the rosy. The rosy was the infected area. Once the flea bit you, that area got red and it was surrounded with a red ring. So they would say, ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. Posies were flowers.
To keep the funky smell away.
They put the flowers in the pockets of the people who were dying and sick because they were decaying. They were dying on their feet and they stank. So they put the pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes. Because they realized that the infected, even dead, the infected could still infect other people. So the best way to get rid of the disease was to burn the bodies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. They were dying in millions, wiping themselves out from just being dirty and not keeping separations between things. This was their way. So, where was we at? Black Death. Okay. What saved those people during the time, the Polish people and other people during that time, was their way, their deen, their Tao, their culture is what saved them. So now we find ourselves in the so-called modern era. And yet, culture is timeless because culture is the transmission of ideas from one generation to the next. That is what culture is. So I ask you a question. In this modern era, in this modern time where we have all this technology, have you heard people saying, you don't have to shower every day? Have you heard this? Has this come across your social media feed, Black Twitter or whatever? Have you seen this?
What the fuck is Black Twitter?
It's just Twitter. It's not Black. It's
Oh,
not a thing.
shit.
But I'm sure you've seen this, where people are commenting that you don't have to wash every day. Somebody said if you wash every day, you wash off the good bacteria with the bad bacteria.
Say that shit, guys. Shut the fuck.
Don't make me Google it.
Nigga, ain't nobody saying dumbass shit like that. Go ahead and finish your lesson, dog. Don't teach lies. What are they saying?
Don't believe me, just look it up. If this hasn't come across your plate yet, your table yet, just look it up. But I'm sure you saw it. You saw it. You saw Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher say they don't teach their kids to wash. You saw it, because I saw it. Cultural transmission. The idea that bathing, you ain't got to do that all the time, is still here. The Black Plague was here in 1300, 700 years ago. People were saying, it's not necessary for you to bathe every day. 700 years later, and your so-called modern era, people are still saying the same thing. And people are still washing every day. People are still bathing. People are still practicing the old ways.
And not dying from COVID.
Beware of the cultural ideas that you accept. Be aware of your own cultural ideas and how they affect the whole. Because We don't have to like all members of our family. They are family members nonetheless. The human family is a family. And we ain't got to get along with all the members of the family. And we ain't got to do things exactly like all the other members of the family. But we also should not throw away our way in favor of another way, because there is value in your way.
So what's the value in not washing up?
You're going to have to ask somebody who does that. They told me you're going to kill the good bacteria with the bad bacteria. That's what they told me the value was. Or wash off the oils in which the bacteria live on your skin. Washing those oils off is not good. But again, like I said in the example with alcohol, for some people, because of that, the lack of that gene, ALDH, I think is what they identified it as. The lack of that gene being present in your gene pool, for some people, it's not good for you to drink. It will not be a good thing for you to drink. The outcome for you with your makeup is not good. That ain't got nothing to do with the person standing next to you, though. That person could drink until they fall over, get up the next morning and go to work. But you might try the same thing, become an alcoholic, lose your wife, lose your family. Right?
Kill your kids in a car accident.
Right.
They get deep.
Kill somebody else in a car accident. But it could just be as simple as losing your place, losing your way. Let's say you practice a particular, I don't know, thing. You name it, whatever you want to call it. Right? And then somebody introduced you to alcohol. And because of that deficiency or the lack of that presence of that gene, you become an alcoholic. Your wife stays with you for as long as she can. She try to fight with you, to fight this beast. But it after a while seems next to impossible. It's like you can't beat it, because you allow something to enter into you that should have never been there. Something that you should have said, I'm going to pass on that. That's not for me. That's not my way.
That's how I got banged with that damn thing.
And you lose it all. So I'll leave y'all with this little anecdotal story. Okay. So I hope I get this right. So there's a sergeant. He comes into command, right? When he comes into command, he's looking over his troops and he sees two of his guards are stationed by a bench, right? And they're just stationed there. So he goes over to them. He's like, who told y'all to stand here? They said, Sergeant, the last staff sergeant, the last person, he told us to stand here. So we standing here. So he goes, okay, cool, no problem. As you are, keep guarding the bench. He calls up the former sergeant. He says, yo, man, you got these two guys out here guarding this bench. What's up with that? Why are they guarding the bench? There's nothing there. It's just the bench. He said, I don't know, man. The last sergeant before I came in, he had two people guarding the bench, so I put two people on the bench. Told him to guard the bench. Oh, okay, cool. Hang up with that sergeant. Looks up, finds the sergeant before that one. Calls him up. He said, hey, man, I came into charge. I just want to know, why did you have two people guarding the bench? This sergeant says, well, I had two people guarding the bench because when I came into position, the sergeant before me had two people guarding the bench. So I thought, well, I had two men on the bench, so I had them guarding the bench. He said, that's interesting. Gets off the phone with him, looks up the person who was the sergeant before that person. Now this man is old. This man is in his 70s. He's no longer in the military anymore. But he finds this man, gets his number, calls him up. He said, listen, I know this is going to sound strange. I know you're no longer in the military, and this is not your duty and not your charge. But I just find it strange that you would ever have to put two men on a bench, because we've been having these men guard this bench ever since. So, sir, why did you have the two men guarding the bench? And the old man says to him, well, damn, is the paint still wet?
Yup, bitch.
You are dismissed.
Just as like the fucking martial art belt thing. This shit is outrageous.
Keep asking questions, guys. Follow your way. Question every way, even your own. But maintain what is yours. Okay? It might be for a reason. You might not see it today, but it's for a reason. All right, I'm out.
Just press in, babe. It ain't that hard. Man, good job.